Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Coffee with Carl. I'm your host, as always, Carl Zoellner, one of the attorneys with Anderson Business Advisors. And on this episode, I wanted to talk a little bit about when is a corporation needed in your structure. So, first things first is I would say it's always a cost benefit analysis. If you can get benefit out of it, then we'll suggest setting one up. So ultimately, what I look for is when does it make sense? Is when I think you can basically take about three times the value of what it costs to set up and see that sort of tax savings. So the other piece of that is, so when do I need to set up a corporation? I would say sort of tongue in cheek, when do you want to start saving on taxes? So a corporation is a tax vehicle within most real estate investment structures. So that's where we would say you're ready for a corporation. C or S is going to be a toss up a lot of times. So that's why you rely on professionals to sort of run the analysis with you. If you've got questions, we can certainly answer the difference between C and S corporations. And I think I just saw a video released from Toby as well, talking about those, which he is certainly an authority on from his love of the tax code. But I would say when I speak with my clients, when do you need a corporation? When do you want to start saving on taxes? Even if you've only got a couple rental properties or are doing just a little bit of trading, the corporate piece of that is key because the corporate tax code is different than the individual tax code. So, as an individual, the government is nice enough, quote unquote, nice enough to let us earn. They tax the bejesus out of us, and then they let us spend what's left over. From the corporate tax code, you get to earn, spend, and then get taxed on what's left over. So we like that, right? Also, ultimately, as well, if you're one of those folks who spent some tuition learning how to do real estate investing, I spoke with a potential, or excuse me, I spoke with a client yesterday. Not good. Once again, I don't say names of clients I speak with, but I think it's good to illustrate some different stories that happen. Has spent probably up in the $150,000 range between some different real estate investing courses for multifamily investing and things like that. Ultimately, those things are great. And like I said, usually it tends to be a good investment if you follow the rules they teach you, because it'll prevent you from making those six-figure mistakes, uh, especially with mentorships and things like that. The idea, though, is that if we can capture that expense, that would be great for that person, right? Because ultimately, then I can reimburse myself out that first 150,000 I make at 0% tax, because reimbursements come out of your corporation at 0%. It's sort of like if somebody at Michael Bowman or Toby or Clint said, "Hey, bring some donuts into the office," and I didn't have my company card, and I could just put it on my personal card to bring them in. I could do that, but as soon as I submit that receipt, they'll reimburse me back. That's so same thing that a lot of y'all have probably faced in your working lives, is ultimately that the reimbursements come out at zero tax. So it doesn't show up on some tax return that I got paid back for bringing donuts one day, right? So ultimately, same thing works within your own corporation. And in this case, if we're talking about that education area, it's sort of a little bit of a misnomer because there is an education expense. However, when we capture it for those people who have not already been in that line of business, we capture it as a startup expense through the corporation. And usually we'll be suggesting a C corporation there because it's a much cleaner line than it is running it through an S corporation, and far less likely to be audited when we say this is an expense of the business and this is being reimbursed to one of the employees of the business, which you are. So if you set up a corporation, you're an employee of the business. Now, the thing you may have flagged in there is the C corporation is people kind of freak out a little bit about the double taxation. To be quite frank, double taxation in a small corporation is due to not doing enough tax planning. So if you don't want to be double taxed in your C corporation and you still want all the benefits of a corporation, then do a little tax planning and you're fine. I mean, ultimately, I've set up the same thing for my wife. My wife was going to do mobile notary as well as closing agent of business. So I set up a business for her, and I didn't think we would hit enough to not be able to not get it out as all reimbursements. So I set up as a C corporation to be able to reimburse medical expenses and things like that as well. So lots of very cool tax planning tools. However, most of them are linked to a corporation. So at some point, if you don't have a corporation within your entity mix, I would encourage you to reach out to your Anderson advisor and set up a corporation, because that's where your most flexibility in your tax planning is going to happen, especially or even when we're talking about things like small trading accounts. You're not required to make a ton of money within your C corporation in order to get a benefit out of that as well. So just so everybody's aware, like I said, when do you need a corporation within your entity structure? Is when you're looking to do some tax planning and actually take a bit more control over your annual tax burden. So yeah, corporations are cool. There's a few upsides and downsides we can talk about in a later video. But ultimately, yeah, the corporation is the piece that sort of makes a overall difference on your tax planning. So until next time, as always, keep taking advantage of all of our free content. I know if anybody's looking for more corporate tax information, I would encourage you to visit Toby Mathis's tax channel, or the channel we have through Anderson for him, because it's most of it's going to be tax related. So until next time, thank you all for joining with Coffee with Carl. Please remember to like, subscribe, and share with friends. Just keep trying to build up and build up and build up. Now that I'm back, if you had questions of where I was at, there's a video on that as well. So until next time, thank you for joining me. And like I said, we'll be back with some more videos. So thanks, everyone.